So this is your type? Tight pants and rubber noses?
My wife came home to find all her bags packed on the kitchen table. "What the heck is going on, Jason?" Laura stammered, her manicured fingers clutching her designer purse like a shield. I calmly slid a basement key across the granite countertop we'd argued about buying 3 years ago. "Check downstairs," I said, taking a long sip of my beer. "Your boyfriend's waiting." The color drained from her face faster than water down a broken drain. She knew, of course she knew. But Laura Fairburn had always been good at playing dumb when it suited her purposes. "I'm Jason Fairburn, 42 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a decent marriage. I manage its systems for a mid-sized manufacturing company in suburban Dallas, Texas. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps our split-level house in Meadowbrook Estates running. Laura's the ambitious one, or was anyway. She's a family law attorney at Hartwell and Associates downtown, specializing in high-conflict divorces. The irony wasn't lost on me. Our daughters, Beth and Janie, 12 and 9 respectively, were at my mother's house for the weekend. I'd made sure of that. What was about to happen didn't need young eyes witnessing it. "Jason, you're scaring me," Laura said, but her voice carried more annoyance than fear. That was Laura. Even caught red-handed, she'd try to make me the villain. "Am I?" I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. 3 weeks ago, I would have seen the woman I married 15 years ago. Tonight, I saw a stranger wearing my wife's skin. "Go downstairs, Laura. See what I found." She hesitated at the basement door, her hand trembling slightly on the handle. The basement had been my domain for the past 2 years, my workshop, my escape from her increasingly cold shoulder and mysterious late nights. She rarely ventured down there anymore, claiming the unfinished concrete and exposed beams were depressing. The light flickered on, and I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God! Scott! Bingo!" I discovered Laura's affair 3 weeks ago in the most mundane way possible. She'd left her phone charging on the kitchen counter while she showered, and it kept buzzing with text notifications. Normally, I wouldn't have looked. I'm not the jealous type, never have been. But the frequency was annoying, and I figured it might be work-related. Laura was always getting emergency calls from clients. Instead, I found messages that made my stomach turn. "Can't wait to taste you again," from someone named Scott Williams, followed by a photo that left nothing to imagination. Laura's response, "Jason's working late tonight. Come over at 9. That was Tuesday. By Friday, I'd hired a private investigator and confirmed what I already knew. Scott Williams, 34, real estate agent at Premium Properties downtown. Divorced, no kids, drives a ridiculous yellow Vespa because he thinks it makes him look European and sophisticated. In reality, it makes him look like a middle-aged man having a very public midlife crisis. The PI, a grizzled ex-cop named Murphy, had been thorough. Photos, credit card receipts, hotel records. Laura and Scott had been meeting twice a week for 4 months. Always the same routine. Drinks at Vintage Wine Bar, then back to his downtown loft apartment. "Your wife's not very careful," Murphy had told me, sliding a thick manila envelope across his desk. "Most cheaters at least try to cover their tracks. She's been using the joint credit card for everything." That's when I started planning. Laura's footsteps echoed on the wooden stairs as she descended into my carefully prepared stage. I'd spent the entire day setting up, making sure every detail was perfect. Scott Williams sat in my old desk chair, duct tape securing his wrists to the armrests. More tape covered his mouth, though his eyes were wide and very much awake. He was wearing the same expensive suit I'd seen him in at Beth's school concert last month, when he'd had the audacity to show up as Laura's colleague. Surrounding him were blown-up printouts of every text message, every photo, every hotel receipt from their 4-month affair. A video camera on a tripod pointed directly at the scene, its red recording light blinking steadily. "Jason, what have you done?" Laura's voice cracked. "Nothing illegal," I called down from the kitchen. "Scott came over voluntarily. Didn't you, buddy?" That was technically true. I'd sent Scott a text from Laura's phone. "Emergency. Need to see you at my house immediately. Jason's out of town." He'd shown up 20 minutes later with flowers, and what I assumed was protection in his jacket pocket. The duct tape had been necessary when he'd tried to leave after seeing my little display. Laura's heels clicked rapidly on the stairs as she rushed back up. "Jason, this is insane. You can't just—" "Can't what?" I stood up, setting my beer down with deliberate calm. "Can't catch my wife cheating? Can't document evidence of adultery? Can't defend myself in what's obviously going to be a very ugly divorce?" She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Laura was many things, But she wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what this meant for her career, her reputation, her carefully constructed image as the perfect suburban attorney mom. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. 3 weeks, though looking back, I should have figured it out months ago. The late nights, the new lingerie, the sudden interest in yoga classes that apparently don't exist. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through photos. "Did you know Scott's been posting about your yoga sessions on his Instagram? He's got quite the following." Laura's face went white. "He wouldn't." "Oh, but he did. Nothing explicit, just enough to make it clear he was spending time with a married woman. Your mutual friends downtown have been talking, Laura. Everyone knows." The truth was, I'd spent the last 3 weeks becoming an expert on my wife's double life. I'd followed her, photographed her, documented everything. I'd learned Scott's schedule, his habits, his weaknesses. I discovered that Laura had been telling people at work that our marriage was basically over, and that she was just waiting for the right time to leave. Well, the right time had arrived. "What do you want?" Laura asked. "Justice," I said, "and maybe a little entertainment." The next morning, I woke up alone in our king-sized bed for the first time in 15 years. Laura had spent the night at her sister's house after I'd released Scott with a simple warning: "Stay away from my family, or the video goes public." He'd left skid marks on the driveway. Laura's absence felt like a weight lifted from my chest. No more pretending everything was fine. No more ignoring the obvious signs. No more sleeping next to someone who'd rather be anywhere else. I made coffee and sat in my kitchen, looking out at the perfectly manicured suburban landscape of Meadowbrook Estates. Our neighbor, Mrs. Greeley, was already in her front yard, probably hoping to catch some drama. She'd been dropping hints about Laura's late nights for weeks, but I'd been too stupid to listen. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. "We need to talk." I replied, "My lawyer will be in touch." That wasn't entirely true yet, but it would be by noon. The girls were still at my mother's house, and I decided to leave them there until I could figure out how to explain that Mommy had been lying to everyone for months. Beth was old enough to understand the basics, but Janie still believed in fairy tales and happy endings. At 10 a.m., I walked into the offices of Davidson, Klein, and Associates. I'd chosen them specifically because they were Hartwell and Associates' biggest competitors. If Laura wanted to play hardball, I'd make sure I had the better team. Patricia Davidson was exactly what I'd hoped for: sharp, ruthless, and completely unimpressed by Laura's reputation. "Your wife specializes in high-conflict divorce?" she asked, reviewing the evidence I'd brought. "Ironic, isn't it?" "More than ironic. It's stupid. She should have known better than to leave such an obvious paper trail." Patricia flipped through the credit card statements. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, even a jewelry purchase. She bought him a watch, Jason, with your money. That detail had particularly stung. A $1,500 Rolex, purchased the same week she'd complained about our grocery budget. What are my options? In Texas, plenty. We have fault-based divorce, which means her adultery is relevant to property division and spousal support. With this evidence, you're looking at a very favorable settlement. Patricia smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Your wife just handed you every advantage. By noon, Laura had been served with divorce papers at her office. By 2 p.m., she was calling me nonstop. I let every call go to voicemail. The first message was angry. "Jason, this is ridiculous. We can work this out without lawyers." The fifth message was desperate. "Please call me back. We need to talk about the girls." The 10th message was threatening. "You have no idea what you're starting." Actually, I knew exactly what I was starting. War. That evening, I picked up Beth and Janie from my mother's house. Mom had raised 4 boys and could smell trouble from 3 counties away. "You look different," she said, studying my face. "Lighter?" "Laura and I are getting divorced." Mom nodded like she'd been expecting this news for years. "About time. That woman never deserved you." "Don't say that in front of the girls." "I'm not stupid, Jason, but I'm also not blind. Laura's been checking out of this family for years." The drive home with my daughters was the hardest part. Beth sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window with the kind of forced maturity that breaks a father's heart. Janie chattered about her weekend with Grandma, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. "Is Mom coming home tonight?" Janie asked as we pulled into the driveway. "No, sweetheart. Mom's staying at Aunt Karen's for a while." "Why?" "Because sometimes adults need space to figure things out." Beth turned to look at me. At 12, she was old enough to read between the lines. Are you and Mom getting divorced? I'd prepared for this question, but it still hit like a punch to the gut. Yes. Janie started crying immediately. Beth just nodded, like she'd been expecting it. Is it because of that guy who came to my concert? Beth asked quietly. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What guy? The one with the stupid scooter. Mom said he was from work, but they were holding hands when they thought nobody was looking. Jesus, even my 12-year-old had figured it out before I had. That night, after the girls were asleep, I sat in my basement, looking at the chair where Scott had spent his uncomfortable evening. The evidence was still spread across my workbench. Photos, printouts, credit card statements, 15 years of marriage reduced to a pile of papers and digital files. My phone buzzed with another text from Laura. The girls need stability. Don't drag them through this, I replied. You should have thought about that before you started screwing your colleague. Her response came immediately. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. For 4 months. In hotels I paid for, wearing lingerie I bought while I was home helping our daughters with homework. The typing indicator showed she was composing a response, then disappeared, then reappeared, then disappeared again. Finally, I want to see the girls. Talk to your lawyer. I don't have a lawyer yet. You will. I turned off my phone and went upstairs. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. Laura hired Claire Barnett from the most expensive family law firm in Dallas. I knew this because Patricia Davidson called me at 7 a.m. with the news. Barnett's good, Patricia said. Ruthless, expensive, and she doesn't lose often. Your wife isn't playing around. Neither am I. Good, because Barnett's first move was predictable. She's filing for temporary custody of the girls and temporary spousal support. She's also claiming you kidnapped and terrorized her client's boyfriend. I laughed. Scott came to my house voluntarily, and he left unharmed. I have security camera footage of the whole thing. Even better, Barnett's overplaying her hand, which means she's desperate. Your wife must be panicking. She was. Laura showed up at my office that afternoon, looking like she hadn't slept in days. My coworkers pretended not to stare as she marched across the IT department in her power suit and designer heels. We need to talk, she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. No, we don't. Talk to my lawyer. Jason, please. 5 minutes. I looked around at my colleagues, all of whom were pretending to work while obviously listening to every word. Laura had just made our private business very public, which was exactly the kind of mistake I'd been hoping she'd make. Fine. Conference room. I led her to the small, glass-walled meeting room where we held department reviews. Through the transparent walls, I could see my entire team watching us like we were a soap opera. You're destroying our family, Laura said the moment I closed the door. I'm destroying our family? That's rich coming from someone who's been cheating for 4 months. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen, Laura? Were you planning to leave me for him? Or were you just going to keep screwing around until I found out? She flinched. I don't know. I was confused. Confused about what? Your marriage vows? Your responsibilities to our children? Or just confused about whether that $1,500 watch you bought him would look good with his yellow Vespa? Laura's face crumpled. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. What do you want from me, Jason? You want me to grovel? You want me to beg? Fine, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A mistake is missing a parent-teacher conference. Carrying on a 4-month affair while lying to your husband and children isn't a mistake, Laura. It's a choice. A series of choices. Through the glass walls, I could see my boss, Rick, approaching the conference room. This conversation was about to get even more public. The girls need both their parents, Laura tried again. The girls need honest parents, parents they can trust, parents who don't sneak around and lie. Rick knocked on the door. Jason, everything okay in here? I opened the door. Laura was just leaving. She looked like she wanted to argue, but the audience of my coworkers made that impossible. Instead, she gathered what remained of her dignity and walked out, her heels clicking angrily on the industrial carpet. Personal stuff? Rick asked after she was gone. Divorce stuff? Rick nodded sympathetically. He'd been through his own messy divorce 3 years earlier. Take whatever time you need, man. And maybe next time handle the drama at home. There won't be a next time. That evening, I took the girls to dinner at their favorite restaurant, a family pizza place called Mario's that Laura had always considered beneath us. She preferred upscale bistros with wine lists and cloth napkins. The girls preferred pepperoni pizza and arcade games. Mom called me today, Beth said, picking pepperoni off her slice. She was crying. I am sorry to hear that. She said you're being mean to her. I chose my words carefully. Your mom and I are going through a difficult time. Sometimes adults say things they don't mean when they're upset. Are you being mean to her? I'm protecting our family. Beth considered this. From what? From people who want to hurt us? Janie looked up from her coloring sheet. Is Mom one of the people who wants to hurt us? The question hit me like a sledgehammer. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that her mother chose her own happiness over her family's well-being? Your mom loves you very much, I said finally. But sometimes people make choices that hurt the people they love. Like when I broke Janie's toy because I was mad? Beth asked. Something like that? But you made me apologize and buy her a new toy with my allowance. That's right. Is Mom going to apologize and fix what she broke? Out of the mouths of babes. I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so. That night, after the girls were in bed, I found myself back in the basement, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal. 15 years of marriage, 2 beautiful daughters, a house, a life we'd built together. All of it destroyed because Laura got bored and decided she deserved more excitement. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. Scott. I'd been wondering when he'd work up the courage to contact me directly. I replied, You're right, it's just getting started. Within minutes, my phone was ringing. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to Scott's nervous, angry message. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. What happened between Laura and me, it just happened, okay? We didn't plan it. But you can't just threaten people and expect. I deleted the message and blocked his number. Scott Williams was about to learn that some actions have consequences that last longer than the pleasure that caused them. 2 weeks into the divorce proceedings, my carefully ordered world exploded when I discovered that my closest friends had known about Laura's affair all along. The revelation came during what was supposed to be a routine guys' night at Murphy's Pub. Tom Henderson, Mike Sullivan, and Dave Chen had been my core group since college. We'd been best men at each other's weddings, godparents to each other's kids, the kind of friends you assume you'll have forever. So how are you holding up? Tom asked, nursing his second beer. This whole thing with Laura must be rough. I'm managing, I said. The hardest part is feeling like an idiot for not seeing it sooner. Mike and Dave exchanged a look that made my stomach drop. What? I asked. Nothing, man. Just, these things happen? What things? What look was that? Tom shifted uncomfortably. Jason, maybe we should what? Spit it out. Dave cleared his throat. We knew something was going on. The bar noise faded to background static. You knew? Not knew, Mike said quickly. Just suspected. For how long? Another exchange of looks. How long? I repeated, my voice getting dangerous. Maybe 6 months, Tom admitted. Dave saw them together at that new wine bar downtown. They looked close. And you didn't think to tell me? It wasn't our business, Mike said. Marriage stuff is complicated. We figured if you needed to know, you'd find out. I stared at them, these men I'd considered brothers, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. You've been sitting here for 6 months watching me play the fool, knowing my wife was cheating, and you said nothing? Jason, come on, Dave said. What were we supposed to do? Break up your marriage based on suspicion? You were supposed to be my friends. We are your friends, Tom insisted. That's why we stayed out of it. I stood up, throwing a 20 on the table. Friends don't let friends get humiliated. Friends don't sit back and watch while someone they care about gets betrayed. Where are you going? Mike called. To find better friends. I walked out of Murphy's Pub and never looked back. The betrayal hit harder than Laura's affair. I'd expected marriage to be complicated, but friendship was supposed to be simple. You had each other's backs. You told the truth, even when it hurt. You didn't let your buddy walk around looking like a fool while his wife screwed around on him. But the worst part came the next day, when Patricia Davidson called with an update on the divorce proceedings. I've got some interesting news, she said. Claire Barnett contacted me this morning. Apparently, your wife's friends are willing to testify that you've been emotionally cruel and controlling for years. What friends? Let's see. Tom Henderson, Mike Sullivan, and Dave Chen. They're claiming you've been controlling, jealous, and that Laura was afraid of you. The room spun. That's insane! Is it? Because according to their statements, you've been monitoring Laura's activities, following her, and making threats against her boyfriend. I documented evidence of adultery for divorce proceedings. That's not misuse. It's preparation. I know that, and you know that. But a judge might see it differently if 3 of your closest friends testify that this behavior is part of a pattern. I sank into my desk chair. They're lying. Probably, but they're convincing liars with no obvious motive to fabricate testimony. Claire Barnett is good at this, Jason. She's turning your friends against you to build a case for Laura. How? Money, most likely. Or favors. Maybe she promised to represent them in future legal matters pro bono. Maybe she threatened them with subpoenas and harassment if they didn't cooperate. The how doesn't matter. What matters is that your support system just became Laura's tool. After hanging up, I sat in my office staring at my phone. Tom, Mike, and Dave had been in my contacts for over 15 years. We'd shared everything. Victories, defeats, fears, dreams. I'd been the best man at Tom's wedding. Mike had helped me move into my first apartment. Dave and I had coached Little League together. Now they were willing to lie under oath to help my cheating wife take my children away. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I drove to Tom's house and knocked on his door. "Jason," he said, looking guilty and nervous. "What are you doing here? I want to hear you say it to my face." Say what? That I was aggressive. That Laura felt unsafe around me. That I'm the villain in this story. Tom's wife, Jennifer, appeared behind him. "Maybe you should leave, Jason." "Maybe you should mind your own business, Jen. This is between me and my former friend." "Jason, come on," Tom said. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." "Harder than what has to be? Perjury? Betraying someone who trusted you? Helping a cheater steal her husband's children? It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" "Explain it to me, Tom. Help me understand how watching my wife cheat for 6 months, saying nothing, then lying about me in court makes you a good friend." Tom's face flushed. "You want the truth? Fine. Laura came to us months ago, crying, saying you'd become paranoid and controlling. She was scared, Jason. She said you were following her, checking her phone, making accusations." "Because she was cheating. We didn't know that. All we knew was that our friend's wife was terrified and asking for help. So you helped her by lying to me for 6 months, then lying about me in court? We helped her by staying neutral until you lost your mind and kidnapped her boyfriend." The word kidnapped hung in the air between us like a loaded tool. "I didn't kidnap anyone. Scott came to my house voluntarily. And you tied him to a chair. After he tried to leave when he realized he'd been caught. That's kidnapping, Jason, and assault, and probably a dozen other crimes." I looked at Tom Henderson, my former best friend, the man who'd been my best man, the godfather to my oldest daughter, and realized I was looking at a stranger. "You really believe that?" I said quietly. "You actually think I'm the bad guy here? I think you've lost perspective. I think you need help. I think you're a coward who's more interested in avoiding conflict than standing up for what's right. Get off my property, Jason." Gladly. I walked back to my car feeling like I'd just buried my best friend. In a way, I had. The final hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning in Judge Margaret Sullivan's courtroom. Patricia Davidson had warned me that it would be ugly, but I wasn't prepared for just how ugly. Claire Barnett had done her homework. She'd painted me as a controlling, paranoid husband who'd driven his wife into the arms of another man through years of emotional misuse. My former friends testified via video deposition, each one describing incidents that sounded damning when stripped of context. Tom talked about the time I'd interrogated Laura about working late, leaving out the fact that she'd missed Janie's birthday party without calling. Mike described my obsessive behavior regarding Laura's whereabouts, failing to mention that this had started only after I'd found evidence of her affair. Dave testified about my violent temper, referencing the time I'd thrown a glass against the wall during an argument, but not mentioning that the argument had been about Laura's decision to take the girls to her mother's house for 2 weeks without discussing it with me. Taken together, their testimony painted a picture of a marriage destroyed by my paranoia and control, not Laura's infidelity. But Patricia Davidson was worth every penny I was paying her. "Mr. Henderson," she said during Tom's deposition, "when exactly did Mrs. Fairburn first approach you with concerns about her husband's behavior?" "I don't remember the exact date. Was it before or after you witnessed her with Mr. Williams at the wine bar?" Tom's face went pale on the video screen. I'm not sure." "You're not sure? But you testified that you saw Mrs. Fairburn and Mr. Williams together approximately 6 months ago, and that they appeared to be in an intimate relationship." Are you now saying you can't remember whether her complaints about her husband came before or after you witnessed evidence of her adultery? I didn't witness adultery. I saw them having drinks. Drinks and what else, Mr. Henderson? They were close. How close? Objection, Claire Barnett interrupted. This is harassment. Overruled, Judge Sullivan said. Answer the question, Mr. Henderson. They were holding hands, kissing. And you didn't think to inform your close friend that his wife was kissing another man in public? It wasn't my place. But it was your place to testify against him in his divorce proceedings? Tom had no answer for that. Patricia demolished Mike and Dave with similar precision, exposing the timeline that proved Laura had been building her case against me long before I'd discovered her affair. She'd been planning her exit strategy, recruiting allies, and constructing a narrative that would protect her reputation and her custody rights. But the real bombshell came when Patricia called her surprise witness. Your Honor, I'd like to call Claire Barnett to the stand. The courtroom went silent. Claire Barnett looked like she'd been struck by lightning. Your Honor, she protested, I'm counsel in this case. I can't testify. You can if you have relevant knowledge of the facts, Judge Sullivan ruled. And according to Mrs. Davidson's motion, you do. It took me a moment to understand what was happening. Then Patricia winked at me and I realized she'd been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. Claire Barnett was sworn in, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Miss Barnett, Patricia began, how long have you known Laura Fairburn? I met her when she retained my services for this divorce. And when was that? Approximately 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago, but Mr. Fairburn only discovered his wife's affair 3 weeks ago. How did Mrs. Fairburn know she needed a divorce attorney before her husband knew about the affair? Claire's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Miss Barnett, did Mrs. Fairburn tell you she was planning to leave her husband before he discovered her adultery? Attorney-client privilege is waived when the attorney has knowledge of ongoing fraud, Patricia interrupted. Did Mrs. Fairburn retain your services to help her hide assets and plan her departure while maintaining the facade of a happy marriage? I need to consult with my own attorney. Your Honor, Patricia said, I have phone records showing multiple calls between Miss Barnett and Mrs. Fairburn dating back 3 months, as well as credit card records showing that Mrs. Fairburn paid Miss Barnett a retainer 2 months before Mr. Fairburn filed for divorce. Judge Sullivan looked at Claire Barnett with the expression of someone who just found a dead fish in her desk drawer. Miss Barnett, did you advise Mrs. Fairburn to continue her extramarital relationship while building a case for emotional misuse against her husband? I advised her to document any concerning behavior that you helped her twist into something threatening. I advised her of her legal rights, including the right to commit perjury. Objection. Claire finally found her voice. Sustained, Judge Sullivan said, but I'll allow the question to stand in the record. The rest of the hearing was a formality. Judge Sullivan awarded me primary custody of the girls, the house, and most of our assets. Laura was ordered to pay me spousal support and child support, a reversal that left her looking shell-shocked. But the real victory came afterward, in the courthouse hallway. You think you've won, Laura said, her voice shaking with rage. But you've destroyed everything. The girls will hate you for this. The girls will know the truth, I replied, that their mother chose her own pleasure over their family's well-being. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Every day for 4 months, you chose to lie to your children and betray your husband. You chose to hire a lawyer and plan your escape while pretending to work on our marriage. You chose to turn my friends against me with lies and manipulation. Jason, you chose this, Laura, all of it, and now you get to live with the consequences. She started to cry, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize and couldn't forgive. That evening, I sat in my kitchen with Beth and Janie explaining what the judge had decided. So, we get to stay here? Janie asked. Yes, sweetheart, this is your home. And Mom has to move out? Mom already moved out. She's going to get her own place and you'll visit her on weekends. Beth, mature beyond her years, asked the harder question, why did Mom do it, Dad? I thought about sugarcoating it, about protecting their image of their mother, about taking the high road. Instead, I told them the truth. Because she forgot that being a wife and mother was more important than being happy all the time. She forgot that families are built on trust and honesty and sacrifice. She forgot that her choices affect more than just herself. Will you forget too? Janie asked. Never, I promised. You two are the most important thing in my life. Nothing will ever change that. 6 months later, Laura's law firm fired her when the details of her divorce became public. Scott Williams lost his real estate license after it came out that he'd been having affairs with multiple married clients. Tom, Mike, and Dave found themselves social pariahs when word spread about their testimony. I rebuilt my life from scratch, made new friends, and focused on raising my daughters. They thrived in the stable, honest environment I provided, and gradually stopped asking when Mom was coming home. Laura moved to Austin and took a job with a small firm that specialized in personal injury cases. She sees the girls every other weekend when she remembers to show up. As for me, I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something better from the ashes of what was destroyed. I learned that loyalty is earned, not assumed. I learned that the truth, however painful, is always better than a comfortable lie. And I learned that sometimes, when everything falls apart, you discover you're stronger than you ever imagined.